My name is Caroline Parker. Years old, living in an elegant white-roofed house, quiet suburban neighborhood of Austin, Texas. From the outside, anyone would probably think I'm living a dream life, a house with a rose garden blooming year-round. A handsome husband, full-time homemaker role. I've proudly devoted myself to tending to every corner of this home for more than 10 years. My husband, Thomas Parker, is 38 years old, works as a sales director for a large pharmaceutical company, tall with well-coiffed brown hair. Confident smile that can effortlessly charm anyone he meets for the first time. In the early days of our marriage, I really thought I was lucky. Thomas was chivalrous, ambitious, always knew how to make people befriend him whenever friends came over. They would tease me. Caroline really got a gem. Hold on to him tight. Back then, I'd just smile, thinking our love could always withstand any storm. We fell in love and married after nearly 2 years of dating. At first, I was full of hope for a perfect home where the laughter of children would fill the mornings. But as the years passed, anxious waits in clinic rooms, cold test results, failed treatments gradually drained that hope. I spent 4 years undergoing fertility treatments, trying everything from Eastern to Western medicine, only to finally let go when the last doctor sighed and said, "It's all in the hands of fate." At the start, Thomas encouraged me a great deal. He took my hand and spoke, "As long as I have you, I am whole." But I still sharply recall the times he stood there in silence observing the neighbor's child at play in the yard, his eyes brimming with something he never uttered out loud. Those eyes were like soft scratches on my heart, all changed totally after my parents died. My dad passed away due to a stroke, just 3 months afterward. My mom, too, departed after an extended illness. That bereavement left me empty, but it also hurled me into the position of exclusive heir of the legacy my parents struggled to establish, a minor but stable real estate business, some apartments and savings I didn't anticipate. That amount was sufficient for Thomas and me to improve our lifestyle. We relocated to our present house, purchased a new SUV, traveled at least twice a year to Florida or California luxury resorts. I began to observe Thomas's stare shifting, not so much towards me, but upon all that surrounded me. That was when I initially experienced an imprecise apprehension. I couldn't pinpoint it. Others around us continued to view us as the ideal couple. The glitzy check-in photos, costly wine gatherings, jealous best wishes every time I shared something on social media. It was all like a veil over the sleepless nights when I heard my own lonely sighs. I wondered sometimes, might material wealth be slowly destroying something that had once seemed so firm between us? But then I would console myself that perhaps I was being too sensitive. Thomas still seemed to be the perfect man in our friends' eyes. Still spoke sweet nothings to me in public, but I couldn't help but notice the increasing space in his movements, the moments when he smiled. But his eyes no longer possessed that same warm spark they had before. In this well-stocked home, I sometimes felt like a foreigner in my own existence. I never thought that the wealth I believed was a gift of fate would be what sucked me into an undertow I never anticipated. In the months following our relocation to our new home, I noticed more changes in Thomas. He did not seem as keen to return home anymore. The warm dinners which had become our norm were swapped for abrupt text messages. "I'm at work. Do not wait up for dinner," initially. I kept telling myself it was just a demanding period at work, but with time. His reasons kept repeating themselves to the point of being insincere. I couldn't keep my heart from closing up with a rising feeling of apprehension. These days, Thomas was coming home late nearly every night. Most nights it wasn't until the clock reached 10 p.m. that he'd be walking in the door, tired looking, but with a strange excitement in his eyes. Some nights, when I asked softly, "Is everything all right at work?" Thomas would smile weakly and reply, "Just a lot of new projects. Don't worry." But his indifference in his voice only made me more nervous. What bothered me the most was his phone. Thomas no longer placed his phone on the table anymore as he used to. He always had it on him, and whenever a call came through, he would hastily go out onto the balcony or downstairs to the garage, steering clear of my eyes. Sometimes I could hear him speaking so low it was almost a whisper. Though he used to tell me everything. Work calls and even idle conversation with coworkers. Once, when I caught a sudden step outside onto the balcony, he terminated the call hastily and put on a calm expression. That was a client. Big deal tomorrow. But I'd heard distinctly a woman's voice on the other line. Soft laughter. It didn't sound like any client he'd ever talked about. Thomas also began not to share his monthly credit card statements with me anymore. When I inquired, "Can you please give them to me so I can monitor our expenses?" he flashed a fast response. "I'll do it myself. Don't want to get it mixed up with the company card. Too big of a hassle." His expression revealed a flash of annoyance that took me aback. It was the first time in our marriage that he had been annoyed when asking about spending. Something we had always promised would be totally open. I found myself lost in my own house. The evenings I spent alone in the living room watching car headlights on the road and speculating. Is Thomas still the man who promised to stick by me? For life? I kept repeating to myself that I must trust him, to give him time. But night after night, the uncertainty within me swelled like a dark cloud I could not dispel. One Saturday night, Thomas surprised me by taking me to a company party, a function he no longer spoke about as frequently as before. The air glittered with golden lights and gentle music. Thomas laughed and joked with everybody as if nothing ailed him. I attempted to fit in, reminding myself to release my suspicions. But then, as I stood alone by the wine bar, I overheard a conversation between Thomas and a coworker. Thomas leaned toward the individual, his voice lowering. "The San Antonio project is virtually done. Then, I'll have greater freedom." The coworker laughed softly. "You're very secretive about it. Keep any trace?" Thomas sipped his wine, his eyes flashing, with something I could not determine was worry or exhilaration. "Keep calm. All is well." San Antonio? I'd never heard Thomas say anything about any project there. That city is more than 100 miles from Austin, not a place he typically works. My heart raced, struggling to swallow the tide of fear welling up within me. I couldn't make myself get up. That night, on my way home, Thomas took my hand, still the kind husband everybody praised. But I no longer found any warmth in that hand. I knew the uncertainty in my mind could no longer be ignored. I was confident that I could handle the transformation of Thomas. But then a call from my best friend, Allison, stoked the flames of suspicion I had worked so hard to snuff out in the past days. Allison was my friend since college, and now was employed by a media firm in Houston. That day, just as I put my teacup on the table, the phone rang. Her voice was heard, a little uncertain, but with worry. "Caroline, I have to tell you something. Last week, I was on a business trip to San Antonio. I'm not entirely sure, but I saw Thomas. I stood there frozen, clutching the phone in my hands. What did you say? I kept telling myself. Perhaps I was wrong, but it was undoubtedly Thomas. He was in a tiny cafe by the bus terminal with a blonde woman, younger than you. They looked quite intimate. I don't want to make assumptions, but it didn't quite feel right. I could feel my throat constrict, my heart pounding like it was going to explode from my body. I tried to calm myself down and thanked Allison for letting me know. That night, I sat by the window, gazing out into the serene night sky with my heart in turmoil. So many things flooded in at once. Who was she? Why was Thomas keeping this from me? Why did everything correspond to the signs I'd seen all along? Days later. Thomas came home from work early one day, unexpectedly. His face lit up exceedingly bright as he entered the house. Before I could utter a word, He spoke. I believe we require some time for ourselves. Let's spend the weekend in New Orleans. I've already reserved a room in a riverside hotel. We can revive the things between us. What do you think? I was taken aback. Thomas had been making work an excuse to keep himself from personal moments like these for more than a year now. This spontaneous invitation left me both happy and uncomfortable. I attempted to cover up my discomfort with a serene expression. Did you mean that? Thomas embraced me, buried his cheek in my hair, his voice warm, but there was a strange chill that I felt. I love you. That's all you have to remember. Caroline. His eyes deep as he regarded me. But somehow I found in them something that seemed to be evasion. The entire night prior to the trip, I stayed awake when Thomas finally slept. I sat in silence in the faint light, on a whim. I opened his briefcase, the one he always kept with him. I hadn't intended to intrude on my husband's privacy, but something within compelled me to dig for the truth. Inside, apart from his laptop and notebook, I saw a fat file folder with pale blue cover. My hand shook as I drew it out. Austin Mental Wellness Center medical file. Printed words on the cover shocked me. My heart beat like a wild animal as I scanned the first few pages. Complicated medical jargon and messy red-marked charts that I couldn't make out filled the file, but one part grabbed my attention. It contained my name, Caroline Parker. Preliminary assessment. Symptoms consistent with delusional disorder. My eyes blurred. I didn't even want to read any further. My hands refolded the file and returned it back just as it had been. I collapsed to the bedroom floor, tears streaming down my face. But I didn't even dare make a sound. Abruptly, memories flashed through my head. Thomas's faraway stare. The nights he returned home late. The strange telephone calls. Those words of his prior. That's all you have to hold on to. I love you. I no longer understood what was real and what wasn't. The voyage to New Orleans. Was it truly a vacation to recuperate, or was it the beginning of something much more sinister than I dared to picture? The voyage to New Orleans started beneath the gentle morning sun, but the mood in the vehicle was decidedly somber. Thomas drove, his eyes on the road, but unable to conceal his tension. He kept looking back at the rearview mirror so much that I had to ask, is something wrong? Is someone behind us? Thomas let out a strained laugh, not turning to look at me. It's nothing. I guess I'm just tired and a little edgy. Don't worry. But the laugh no longer comforted me. During the entire drive, he received many calls, talking so quietly I could hardly hear. His fingers wrapped around the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. I sat next to him in silence, hearing my pounding heartbeat with each passing minute, only increasing my anxiety, confined to the middle of the day. We pulled into an ancient gas station on the side of the road, surrounded by the desolation of Louisiana. A sign that had long faded read, "Bayou Stop Gas, swinging in the wind." Thomas shut off the engine and glanced at me. "Do you need to go in and grab some water or something? I'll fill up the tank, then we'll head out again." I nodded and stepped out while Thomas went toward the pump. A young man with suntan skin and a worn blue uniform came over. His name tag read Ethan. He started pumping gas but subtly glanced at me through the window. Thomas turned his back to check the rear of the car. Ethan came closer to the passenger side window, pretending to wipe it, then quickly pushed a tiny slip of paper through the space. I stood still. Ethan remained silent, merely shook his head once, his eyes stern, then strode away as if nothing had occurred. I looked at Thomas. He was hunched over, inspecting the tires, unaware of it, my hands trembling. I unfolded the note behind the cover of the dashboard. "You have to leave here immediately now. He is deceiving you. Don't ask. Don't waste time." I could hear my heart pounding loudly. a sound that echoed so hard it felt suffocating. My whole body went cold. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Thomas came back, his voice light as the breeze. "Go on in and get something to drink. I'll finish up here and come join you." I clenched the piece of paper in my hand and walked quickly into the convenience store. My mind was in chaos. Who was Ethan? Why did he send me a message? Did he confuse me with someone else? Or was I really in danger? In the store, I went through the motions of picking up a couple of bottles of water, my eyes searching for Ethan, at the end of the hall that led to the back. He stood there, his expression saying, "Come on." I paused for a moment, then followed, outside back, alongside a line of garbage cans and an old generator. Ethan stared me right in the eye, his voice low, but understandable. "Sorry for frightening you, but I couldn't simply do nothing. 3 weeks ago, I met your husband here. He was with a blonde woman. They were close to each other. I didn't intend to meddle, but I listened as I shouldn't have. The floor seemed to have tipped under me." My voice broke out. "What were they discussing?" Ethan swallowed hard, looking nervously in the direction of the front. He referred to her as his true wife. When she asked him what about her, your husband replied, "Let this trip solve it. Then it will all be ours." I heard it loud and clear. But I couldn't believe it. But this morning, he stopped to get gas alone, called someone, said, "All the hospital intake paperwork is complete. She will not have any other opportunities." I clenched the hem of my shirt so my hands would not shake. Ethan continued, his eyes sincere. "I have no idea what they are scheming, but it's absolutely not good. Don't return to the car. If you desire so, I'll drop you off at the closest police station. They'll assist you." Footsteps echoed from the entrance. Thomas's voice shouted harder than normal. "Caroline, where are you?" Ethan spoke softly, pleading. "You must make a choice immediately. If you return, you will have no other opportunity," I breathed, looking into those genuine eyes, all those years of devotion. All those memories now resembled a broken photograph that could not be reassembled. I nodded, my voice a mere whisper to myself. "Help me escape here." Thomas's voice rang out from the front, no longer bearing any of the gentleness I once knew. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as if it would explode. Each piece in my head fell into place. The cryptic calls, the bizarre medical file, the planned trip. It was no longer suspicion, it was the truth. I sprinted after Ethan, circling around the back exit of the gas station. His rusty old blue pickup waited. Ethan pulled open the door, encouraging softly, "Hurry, don't look back." I climbed into the truck, hearing Thomas's footsteps pounding behind us. As the truck pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Thomas was running out. His face flushed with fury and panic. There was no longer the look of a husband searching for his wife, only the face of a man watching his plan fall apart. The old truck roared to life, kicking up dust as it left the gas station, leaving Thomas behind. I sat trembling beside Ethan. He looked at me, his voice calming down. "The police station is only 30 miles from here. Hold on. You're safe now." I could only manage a slight nod, silently crying tears down my face. When we arrived at the police station in the small town of Bayou Grove, there to meet me was a female officer called Kelly. I told it all. The warning note, the medical file, Thomas's bizarre behavior. Kelly listened carefully, then spoke softly. "At this stage, we can't arrest him on suspicion alone, but we'll make a report immediately. I recommend that you seek an emergency protective order and get a lawyer or private investigator to collect additional evidence." Ethan brought me to the residence of one of his friends, an older woman named Doris, who lived in close proximity. Doris gave me a big hug I wasn't expecting from a stranger. That night, I phoned Allison and reported everything. Allison hooked me up with a private investigator she knew, Nathan Brooks, a marital fraud case expert, the very next day. Nathan picked me up at a small coffee shop in Baton Rouge. He was a middle-aged guy with piercing eyes, but a soothing voice. "I'll begin by investigating Thomas Parker's past. I think there's something fishy about his life and identity." Days later, Nathan called me in a serious tone. "Caroline, I must meet with you immediately. I have uncovered the truth." At his tiny office, Nathan gave me a fat file. On top was a photo of Thomas standing beside a blonde lady and two twin kids aged 8 years old taken in front of a house in Jackson, Mississippi. He gestured at the picture. "Your husband's real name is Thomas Green. He has another family in Jackson for the last 10 years. That lady is Amanda Green, his legal wife in Mississippi. The 2 kids are his." I was shocked. Said years, which meant when he and I were still newlyweds. "He already had another family," Nathan went on, his voice somber. "They've been scheming to get control over your properties. I got a warrant to go into Thomas's telephone records where I listened to the recordings. He called a man named Samuel, a psychiatrist, to create a phony file for you, preparing to commit you under false pretenses where you would be in their power to take over your assets. He gave me Thomas's bank statements, payments to Dr. Samuel with the note, file preparation fee. My hands shook while I held those documents. It was all more obvious than ever. The man whom I had loved and trusted for all these years turned out to be a crook, exploiting my trust to attempt to steal everything." Nathan laid his hand lightly on the table, his eyes brimming with determination. "Now is when you need a good attorney. I can refer you. We'll stand together to keep you safe and take him down." I took a deep breath, my heart heavy, but with a newfound weird sense of determination. Even if everything in my past was based on lies, I wouldn't let him ruin the rest of my life. Following the encounter with Nathan Brooks, I knew I couldn't wait even a day, with every last ounce of energy. I reached out and called Allison, having her call me a lawyer strong enough to assist me in fighting this difficult legal case. Immediately, Allison introduced Sarah Whitman to me, a prominent Baton Rouge lawyer who had won numerous cases of marital fraud and theft of assets. That same afternoon, I visited Sarah at her office, a humble place that oozed determination with the stacks of thick case files on the desk. Sarah listened as I narrated, her eyes flashing with determination. "Caroline, this document is sufficient to convict Thomas of bigamy and fraud. The first thing we should do is straightaway apply for an order to freeze all the joint and separate accounts in order to stop any transactions." With Sarah and Nathan's assistance, I signed all the documents straight away, just 2 days later on. The court granted the order for freezing the accounts and real property assets which Thomas had jointly held with me. At the same time, Sarah officially filed charges with the authorities in both Louisiana and Mississippi, the 2 places where Thomas had operated under his false identity. The storm began. Thomas surely never expected that I could act so quickly and decisively. Days later, police working across both states raided and arrested Thomas at a rental apartment near the Texas border, where he had been hiding after realizing his plans had collapsed. Amanda Green, his real wife, was also arrested for interrogation on accusation of being an accomplice. I still distinctly remember the day I walked into the courtroom for the very first time. My heart thumped against my chest upon seeing Thomas brought in, handcuffed, looking far from the confident, polished man who had stood at my side. His expression revealed sheer bitterness upon seeing me sitting there, not the trusting, loving wife I had been, but the plaintiff willing to stand up and fight for justice. The case soon caught the attention of the local media. Journalists gathered outside the courthouse, flashbulbs flashing as I stepped out with Sarah. But I no longer feared. The only thing on my mind was putting an end to this nightmare once and for all. During the trial, which took over 3 months, The evidence Nathan and Sarah had collected left Thomas with no means of denying his crimes. Recordings of his illicit telephone calls, bank records confirming bribes paid to the psychiatrist, fake medical records concerning myself, pictures of Thomas with Amanda, their marriage license from Jackson, all presented in court. Finally, the verdict was read. Defendant Thomas Green is sentenced to 7 years in prison for bigamy and asset fraud. Amanda Green is sentenced to 3 years in prison as an accomplice. Heard those words. I felt my entire body lift. I clutched Sarah's hand firmly, silent tears falling, not from hurt, but because I knew I had done the right thing. Thomas never looked at me as he was taken away. Maybe he realized in the end, liars cannot win forever. I decided to sell the house where so many false memories haunted me, with that money and what assets I managed to keep. I relocated to a small coastal town outside Mobile, Alabama, a quiet space far away from all the painful memories. My new home was simple, but for the first time in years, I genuinely felt like I was home. In the early mornings, I sat on the veranda, drinking hot coffee, hearing the noise of waves beating against the sea. The sun sparkled on the sea like a reminder. From now on, I would begin anew without fear, without disorientation. During the initial days in the coastal town of Mobile, Alabama, I led a quiet life, sitting here healing the wounds that I had refused to confront all those years. Every morning, I sat on the porch, looking out at the seemingly infinite blue ocean. Hearing the waves and seagulls cry, one afternoon, walking through town square, I noticed a notice pinned up outside the library, support group for victims of marriage fraud and emotional abuse, heal and share together. I don't know why, but I stood there for a very long time. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking of women like me, those who may still be stuck in fear. No escape. The next morning, I walked to the community center and registered, for the first time. Standing in front of strangers, I spoke my truth. My voice shook when I said betrayal. Of the day I had to decide between blind love and bitter truth. But the more I spoke, the freer I became. The bright eyes of the women in front of me, their acknowledging nods, their silent tears, all gave me strength. From a participant, I slowly turned into a supporter. Together with other members, I assisted in organizing sharing sessions, led victims to seek legal assistance. Most importantly, assisted them to rediscover their own value each time somebody mentioned, "Because of you, I mustered up the courage to escape that hell." My heart felt warm. During those days, I maintained contact with Ethan, the young man who had rescued me back then. Ethan had relocated to New Orleans to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering. We usually texted and at times called in each of Ethan's messages. There was an honesty, a benevolence I had never witnessed throughout all the years of a pretend marriage. One afternoon in autumn, I got a message from Ethan, "Caroline, I just graduated. I landed my first job working for a manufacturing firm nearby. My mother would like to invite you to supper in order to thank you for trusting me that day. Do you have the time?" I read the message again and again, smiling unconsciously. The fact was, Ethan and his mother were the ones worthy of thanks, for they had saved me from the depths. That night, I drove over to their house, a small house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of New Orleans. Linda, Ethan's mother, greeted me with a soft smile and a big hug. Dinner was unpretentious but abounding in laughter. We discussed the past, of the future before us. Ethan spoke enthusiastically of his new work and his aspiration to create machines to serve the community. Linda, with her beaming eyes, told of the challenges of parenting a child on one's own and the remorse of having once seen a loved one taken advantage of. I sat there listening, with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in so long among individuals who shared no blood relations, no shared history. I experienced what I had yearned for all these years: true kindness, sincere hearts with no ulterior motives. As we parted ways, Linda took my hand, her voice choked with emotion. "Caroline, thank you for not turning your back on my son that day. Because of you, he's grown so much." I softly squeezed her hand, spoken from the heart. It was Ethan who rescued me. And because of him, I discovered true family isn't about blood, it's about people who treat you with all their heart. That evening, walking home, I visited the beach, went out the door to better listen to the waves. The night sky glittered with stars, and I knew my life had finally started a new chapter. A chapter of liberation, strength, thankfulness to the compassionate hearts who guided me out of the shadows. Reflecting on my path, I know now that what appeared to be the most pain was truly the start of a fresh, meaningful existence. From a betrayed wife, I emerged again stronger, free, more thankful for life's real values. I learned that family is not so much those that have your blood, but those that approach you with integrity and compassion. Now I exist to instill hope, walking with those who, like me, once lost. What do you think of Caroline's tale and her journey of rediscovery? Have your say below and let us know how you feel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories about family and